Hey there, welcome to another album review, and today we actually have You Are the Universe by Four Giants, which, not Four Giants, that I'm like Four Giants, and this was another thing that YouTube just decided to recommend me like a few months slash years. I don't know, I've seen this recommended to me quite a few times, and well, now that I'm doing these things, again, I decided to check it out. I don't know, like YouTube has been recommending me over the years a couple of things, and I never like really check them out, but like I guess now I have an excuse to do it. Now this is essentially like a prog rock, on that sort of, not even prog rock, more like math rock type thing. Basically this is like, it sounded a lot like Pliny to me, except maybe a little bit heavier, and without so much focus on, I guess, the narrative, I would say. Like, I didn't get story from this, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these albums, like 11 songs, most of them are like 3-4 minutes long, around the 4-minute mark, and a lot of them, they sound nice, don't get me wrong. Actually, that's something that I actually always appreciate about, I guess, these subgenres, is that they always sound really nice, they sound really tight. There's definitely a lot of thought put out to how things sound, and you can actually hear everything, which is, I appreciate. You hear the bass, you hear the guitars, like you hear all of that, like you hear all of the sounds really well, rather than just, fucking bass being completely murky underneath everything. It can, like, you can barely hear it, and you have to like really focus to hear. No, it's just like, it's pretty nice, you hear everything, it's super tight, you don't feel like your ears are being assaulted or anything like that. It's just very nice. And overall, like, the sound to me, and again, like, perhaps that's, I think, like, my biggest gripe with this album, is that, like, when I listen to Pliny, and especially that 3 EP run, right, that the Sweet Nothings, and I forget the other ones, The End of Everything, and there was another one, and those 3 EPs, they sounded really nice, but they sounded very, like, approachable, they sounded very casual, but above everything, they had sort of this narrative going on, right? It felt like you were witnessing a story, right? And I feel that with this album, you just didn't have that, like, it sounds nice and everything, but you don't have sort of that, I guess, narrative part of it, that prog part of it, I would say, right? Everything sounds super nice. It's again, it's just nice. It's one of those things where probably I would put this on the background, no questions asked. Like, I think it's really nice to listen to. I think it's very good to sort of be there and be a pleasant hearing, especially because most of it is just instrument. Most of it, there's no lyrics. It's just full instrumentals, and which again, like I mean, maybe I think people think that if you don't have lyrics, it's really hard to build a narrative, and I kind of disagree with that, because I don't think you need a lot of instruments or a lot of lyrics in order to build a narrative. Again, like, Pliny's, especially Sweet Nothings, and End of Everything are probably like my 2 favorite EPs when it comes to a narrative perspective, and they don't have lyrics, right? And they're super small. I think that, like, the way you build the music, the way you compose the songs, and the way that things sound can just imbue people with a certain sense of a narrative, purely because, like, okay, look at movies, for example, right? And look at at soundtracks of movies, right? If you hear the soundtracks, especially the movies that, like, don't have licensing music but actually have composed music for them, right? You can hear when, okay, this song represents a tense moment, right? This song represents a relaxing moment, this song represents a triumphant moment, right? Like, even without the movie and the context of the movie, you can hear the narrative in the music, right? It's the same thing. Like, I heard, or I reviewed the Signalis OST, right? A video game. I never played the game, but listening to the soundtrack, I got a sense of, okay, this song probably is in a tense moment, this song is more to, like, create a ambient of, sort of making you scared or being super tense and, like, making you feel uneasy, right? Like, you can sort of figure out what the narrative is through just listening to the soundtrack, right? And I think that when you hear Pliny, he does that really well. They're not just songs that are very pleasant to listen to, they're also songs that sort of have that narrative built into this. Unfortunately, with this album, I just never really felt that. I never felt there was any song or any moments in songs that were like, oh, okay, this is telling me something different. We're in a different part of the narrative or that is trying to, do something. And I'm not saying that every song needs that necessarily, or every album needs that, or whatever, right? But I think that to me, especially when it comes to stuff that is super heavily instrumental, I think it kind of like needs to, because stuff that is instrumental, you have so many instruments, available to you. Like, you could try and make it something more interesting, you know what I mean? And I'm a sucker for these type of narratives, that are mainly used through or mainly shown by instrumentalization. And again, it just sucks how, this album sounds really nice, but you don't have that, like, narrative, that moment or moments that sort of make you go, oh, now it's getting interesting, right? It's sort of like, I reviewed a couple of days ago the Age of Aquarius album, right? And like, again, that's, super nice sounding music even to put on the background, but as the narrative, even if you take the lyrics out, you can like feel the narrative through the instruments alone. And I think this album doesn't really have that. As many as, or as good as the songs are, and they sound really nice. And look, I bet that this is one of those things where I'm gonna put on the background to work sometimes and whatnot, right? Because it was a really nice experience, it was a really nice experience. At the same time, it's missing that narrative that I really wanted it to have. Because I think like the biggest difference between, like, especially when it comes to prog rock and math rock, especially artists and or artists that I super remember super well and artists that I don't, is exactly like that narrative, that purpose that the songs sort of have, that uniqueness that the songs sort of have, right? Unless you can make stuff sound super catchy and super like cool, like for example Polyphia, I think Polyphia is really good at just making stuff sound very catchy, very approachable from a casual perspective, right? You listen to one of their songs and you go, oh yeah, that's really catchy, like you can vibe to it, like unless you're doing that, I feel that if you're building something that is a bit more on the perhaps theory side of things, right, that it can just get completely lost for people that aren't like really huge suckers for how instruments are played or the technique or whatever. Again, it's back to that old thing where I'm like, technique isn't enough in order to like make your album sound good, if that makes sense, right? Don't get me wrong, it's not that technique is bad necessarily, it just, it needs more in my opinion. And unfortunately, I think that this album really didn't have it. Again, to reiterate, I think the album sounds really nice. I'm not trying to like play down the album or saying that I didn't enjoy it. I did. My time with it was really nice. I think again, like in terms of stuff being and the way stuff sounds, it has that signature style of sounding busy without sounding complete shit. Without sounding completely murky or whatever, right? But it just it's all because I'm always a sucker for these types of things, because when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, if you have enough talent to make stuff that is this technical, right, or at least that is this tight, I think like you could go a little step ahead, or like a little step forward, and try to make it even more unique and even more your own, and sort of like tell your own story with it, right? But I mean, at the same time, I think this was, I didn't actually, this is one of the times I actually didn't research on Google or anything like that about the band, but I think this album is like fucking really, really old. It's almost like 10 years old or something like that, right? It's very like old, that's what I know. So like, this, I am guessing, is like one of the first albums from the band, so that's why, probably they were more focused on, specifically making stuff sound nice rather than trying to, take a step ahead and everything. And I get it, look, even the best bands, the bands that I adore the most, in my opinion, didn't fucking ace it the first album they released, right? It's very rare for bands to do that, so, I get that, but yeah, basically, it still sounded super nice. I think that, I mean, this, I would pin this as math rock, mostly. I'm never like too sure of the genres, and that's why usually I research them and see like what genres people give them, because I'm not sure about them. But yeah, I mean, in terms of my vibe meter, again, like as much as I would love to have a little bit more narrative, I still acknowledge my time with it was really nice, and honestly, this is like Right now I'm feeling an 8 out of 10. Quite frankly, I don't know if it's more, if it's less, right? I think with time, I will probably end up changing my opinion on this one. But yeah, for now, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty deserved, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new album review.